Chapter 4: The Other Act of Terror.
The other act of terror. The other terrorism is that of the ones who have been victims of the unjust policies of mighty nations.
Those whose ethnic aspirations have been suppressed. Those who have been deprived of their home and hearth due to the greed of the world powers. How it was? No! Stop, or we will kill you! How it was reported. Today, the ideological excuse of defending freedoms in the world is no more adequate to conceal the expansionist goals hiding behind this cover. The resistance of the weak has to be exaggerated and highlighted in such a scathing manner as to justify the terror of the mighty. And so we had the clash of civilizations thesis as the ideology of imperialism in the times of oil hunger, ideology of the hegemonic powers to crush the resistance in places where they want direct and indirect control over the resources of the world. Thus, the backward Islamic civilization is clashing with the modern West, the ideologues of imperialists today. Here, in a clever maneuver for those having oil wells, their religious identity, that is Islamic, is highlighted, while for those who aspire to satisfy their oil hunger by buying it for peanuts, the geographical category, the Western, is employed. How can we create a uniform image of all Muslims? I agree, the Muslims today, close to 2 billion strong, are reduced to stereotype, clones of Osama bin Laden or members of Taliban. The diversity recognition amongst the target group is dangerous for the oppressors. So even in India, we see the Muslims being projected as a uniform community. This is like having monolithic image of a community. Yes, since it is easy for the dominant group to deal with the monolithic image of minority, more backward the projection of the image, the better it is. It helps in all the ways, including the times when violence and other suppressions have to be unleashed in pursuance with the politics of dominance.
With this view, the Muslims, whether in Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia or Bangladesh, are cast in a single mold. Now the next step becomes easy since Muslims as a community can be projected to be opposed to modernity. They are terrorists, so there must be something in Islam itself which promotes violence and terrorism. As such, when the programs are unleashed against them in the form of communal violence or aggression is launched against innocent Iraqis or Afghans, consent is easily manufactured for the aggressive act of the superpowers.
We remember that even colonial powers had coined white man's burden thesis during the colonization process.
Similarly, defending freedom has come up while suppressing the rising nationalism, and now the clash of civilization is being touted when the US is trying to control the taps of oil resources all over the world. There are many Islamic countries in and around these resources who had to be rubbed the wrong way in order to control and extend the flow of oil towards fuel tanks of the powerful countries of the West.
So it means some ideological covers are manufactured to cover the economic and political goals. Very true. The ideological cover have been continuously devised. If colonial masters are usurping the resources of colonies, it is white man's burden to civilize the uncivilized people of the colonies. If imperialism is crushing the national sentiments to be able to continue its hegemony on the world, it is fight for the freedom of the world. So, both these clash of civilization and white man's burden have been used as a cover for the proactive deeds of imperialism. The clash theory is propagated in order to explain away the blowback or the reaction to the injustices done to a section of the Arab world.
Yes, as such, we know that all Muslim states are not on one side. One knows that governments of most of the Muslim nations are with the US in its efforts to control the Afghan territory through the new pro-US puppet.
Yes, one also knows that the Muslim dominated countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and many significant ones are with the US for its so called sacrifices to save the freedom in the world.
Terrorism as a phenomenon may never go away, but if it is to be contained, the first step is for America to acknowledge that it shares the planet with other nations, with other human beings, who, even if they are not on TV, they have love and stories, songs and sorrows, for heaven's sake, rights. The September 11 attacks were a monstrous calling card from a world horribly gone wrong. The message may have been written by Osama bin Laden and delivered by his couriers, but it could well have been signed by the ghosts of victims of America's old wars. The millions killed in Korea, Vietnam and Cambodia, the 17,500 killed when Israel, backed by the US, invaded Lebanon in 1982, the 2 lakh Iraqis killed in Operation Desert Storm, the thousands of Palestinians who have died fighting Israel's occupation of West Bank, and the millions who died in Yugoslavia, Somalia, Haiti, Chile, Nicaragua, El Salvador, the Dominican Republic and Panama at the hands of all the terrorists, dictators and genocides, who the American government supported, trained, bankrolled and supplied with arms. Arundhati Roy, Algebra of Infinite Justice.
Some say that the US-led war on terror will rid the world of the problem of terrorism as it aims to eliminate the causes of terrorism.
War on terror is a euphemism for the US imperialist aims to take political and military control of different strategic areas of the world, either for acquisition of oil wealth or for military goals. The terrorist groups scattered here and there are no uniform entity and can be subjected to aggression and eliminated.
But will this end somewhere?
Since they are scattered and are faceless, it is difficult to identify them and restrain them. In the process, what happens is that the US and its allies have been picking one after other the area and bombing them into the Stone Age.
The civilian populations, the non-combatants, are the biggest victims of this aggression. Operation Iraqi Freedom was launched on the pretext of weapons of mass destruction, and it failed miserably because there were no such WMDs in the first place. The UN Observer recommendations were bypassed and a war was launched. This war met with massive resistance from the people of Iraq.
As such, it is a war against Iraqi people, and incidents like Abu Ghraib prison, where the prisoners were sexually assaulted, stripped naked and forced to make human pyramids, and day and night butchering on the Iraqi streets has been made the norm by the US Army. Even the US Army is comprised mainly of the underprivileged sections of the US population, and even by the aliens living in the US and drafted on the promise of green cards. The US, as a matter of fact, has been the major terrorist state in recent times, killing innocent civilians to satisfy its political and economic goals.
The multinational corporations who dictate American policies suffer from an acute greed of profit, and the lives of human beings, especially from other races and areas outside the West, do not matter to them. The recent events of West Asia clearly exemplify the goals of imperialism in the region. To begin with, Saddam Hussein was lured in August 1990 to attack Kuwait, which was pumping out oil at a massive speed and draining a disputed oil field. This would have affected the Iraqi oil reserves also. Due to intense economic pressures, Iraq planned to attack Kuwait. It informed the US administration, which subsequently provoked this attack. Before this, on 25th July 1990, during a meeting, what would be the American administration's reaction if Iraq occupied Kuwait?
Nothing will happen. Once Kuwait was taken over by Iraq as the 24th province of Iraq, US immediately planned to attack Iraq to protect the sovereignty of the Emir of Kuwait. Saddam's offer of withdrawal were rejected, and Bush Sr. preferred a decisive victory instead. Iraq had to be bombed to pre-industrial age.
This fact is known at popular level. This is how the propaganda creates a common sense favorable to the dominant powers.
The retreating Iraqi armies were trapped and massacred. Baghdad and Basra were bombed relentlessly.
Thousands of civilians were killed. 150,000 Iraqis died during this invasion. Electrical sewage treatment system and water treatment plants were ravaged, with the result that waterborne diseases spread. Severe economic sanctions were enforced, which further resulted in the loss of lives of Iraqis, especially children. Due to the sanctions imposed by US on Iraq, over 500,000 children have died. Was it worth?
We think the price is worth it.
Yes, we also recall that after the 11th September 2001 WTC attack, Osama bin Laden reportedly thanked Allah for the same. Allahu Akbar. According to media reports, he spelled his motivation on 7th October 2001, saying, "What America is tasting now is something insignificant compared to what we have tasted for scores of years. Our nation, the Islamic world, has been tasting this humiliation and this degradation for more than 80 years. Its sons are killed, its blood is shed, its sanctuaries are attacked, and no one hears and no one heeds." Was there any real reason for attacking Afghanistan? You are making my water dirty. But it is flowing from your side, sir. No, I have all the reasons to kill you. The lack of any credible reason for attacking Afghanistan led many an observer to comment that the war against Afghans was very much in line with the US's historical role in Afghanistan. In the 1970s, the US hired 7 different parties of fundamentalists called Mujahideen. These were extremists hired by the CIA during the Cold War to draw the Soviets into Afghan trap, as later revealed by former National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski. Change in US policy. The CIA gave arms and ammunition to these Mujahideen. Using these weapons and sophisticated training in the art of terror, these men successfully drove out the Soviets, but also waged terrible war on their own people, killing at least 45,000 people in Kabul alone. Was there any pre-planning? As the invasion of Afghanistan began within few weeks of the WTC attack, the US claimed that they did preparation for this in 3 weeks is to be taken with a pinch of salt. Credible reports have appeared that the US was planning to take military action against Afghanistan to oust Taliban months before September 11.
Most of the current myths about jihad, kafir, and terrorists being bred in madrasas emanate from this massive operation launched by US Secret Service in cooperation with Pakistan's ISI.
It is this effort which led to the emergence of the Al-Qaeda, embracing mainly Arab youths who had come for Afghan jihad from Arab lands. The US propaganda machine keeps dishing out different slogans to serve its foreign and hegemonic economic and energy policies.
The slogan touted during the Cold War era was the defense of freedom, now it is war on terror. The US and other allied media following the traits of US toe the same line.
The ABC of Jihad in Afghanistan. The United States has delivered 4 million radical Islamist textbooks to Afghanistan. More are on the way. In the twilight of the Cold War, the United States spent millions of dollars to supply Afghan school children with textbooks filled with violent images and militant Islamic teachings, part of covert attempts to spur resistance to the Soviet occupation. The primers, which were filled with talk of jihad and featured drawings of guns, bullets, soldiers and mines, have served since then as the Afghan school system's core curriculum. Even the Taliban used the American-produced books.